Hey everybody. So, one of the things that I've been somewhat interested in recently, as I've transitioned a bit away from Laravel for a while in the PHP world, is something I learned about called Phalcon. And Phalcon's goal is to hide all of the internals of the framework compiled as a C extension. So we get the optimization, we get all the flexibility of all the tools from Phalcon or from an MVC framework, but we get to keep them inside of something that's not going to change. And this really does kind of make a lot of sense when you think about it. One of my complaints about Laravel on often is actually just how big, how many levels of indirection there seems when dealing with the core libraries. And I do think it does have an impact on its overall performance. I haven't tested that yet, so that might be something I'm going to look for or pit them against each other on my own. But what I want to do is because there's this extension building portion, I figured it might be fun to just see what it was like to actually set it up. So this is my normal development environment. It's my Mac with Yosemite. And so it's a little bit old. I just don't upgrade Mac OSs very often. I do have PHP pre-installed, of course, because I've been doing Laravel stuff, so I have some bits. And what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure I follow the prerequisites as far as their GitHub is concerned, clone this thing down and build it myself, and just see what pains, if any, I really encounter. This should be pretty cut and dry. Hopefully that goes well. It doesn't take too long. And then I'm going to pop over and actually just try to set up a sample project, which should be actually the real fun of it. And that's what I'm actually excited about. I've been reading the documentation a little bit, and I'm traditionally a Rails developer. So I really am quite impressed with the... it's not Rails-like, and that's a good thing. But it's also kind of the important things you're going to touch all the time, like dealing with responding to actions and controllers and getting access to parameters, seems like it's been kind of well thought out. Now, I don't know what the security is like on that yet. This is a lot of sight unseen, so this is mostly an evaluation, and I'm just kind of trying to see if I were to send this to somebody else or one of my employees, like, go set this up and run with it, realistically, how much trouble are they really going to get into? So, hope I don't bore you too much. But let's get this started. So, as I mentioned, it is delivered as a C extension, which means that we would need to build this for our development environment, and we'd also need to build this again for our production server. That's not a bad thing. I really could see some quite interesting things optimization-wise that might be being done here. Now, I don't know if this is like a C runtime wrapper, or if the framework actually gets compiled to object code. I haven't spent a lot of time dealing with PHP ahead of time compiling. Part in my head, I wonder if it's a process like I used to do in Java, where we would just hide we'd use Rhino and hide some JavaScript inside of a text file, inside of a Java class, and call that Java with JavaScript like at the runtime, and that was not what I would consider the goal for this. So let's see how it goes. All right, so let's see here. All right, so let's get this started. Here is the Phalcon GitHub page, and I'm quite impressed. So just to give you some rundown, it's kind of the thing I always do when I'm picking a new project is I kind of try to get an idea of how many issues there are, how many pull requests are open, how many contributors there have been, and then to some extent I like to look at how fresh. So this is a couple of months old, and that's okay, because as I was reading to the bottom of this, they do not keep their new features in this repo. Let's see, where do they have this? They have a thing called Incubator, Meet the Incubator. So the community development portion of this actually goes into a separate repo. I could see that actually being quite nice. It means that April was the last time there was a release, and or bug fix, and I think that's pretty cool. So You know, it might be worthwhile to walk through the commits at some point, but it does seem like a properly active project with good coverage. Okay, so we're not on Windows, so we're going to skip the Windows section. We're on a Mac. So I need PHP 5.5, 5.6, 7, or 7.1. Well, let's go see what we actually have over here in our terminal window. So we are at 7.0.12. Well, I could go to 7.1, but I don't care enough. And I've got other projects on 7.0, so let's just stick with that. All right, I need G++ and C-lang. So, oops. Maybe I don't have those. I should. I have Apple's version of C-lang at greater than 3. Okay. I need VC, Visual C++. That's cool though that they have deprecated 5.3 and 5.4. And I need RE2C. So let's see if I can get that. Brew install RE2C. I'm pretty sure I have make. Oh, G++ or C-lang or VC++. Well, since I've been building Ruby for a while, I'm 100% positive that I have those extensions and Xcode is installed, so we shouldn't have a problem. Come on, Homebrew. Time to update. There we go. All right, so I think I've got all the dependencies now. And very convenient of it giving me everything except Mac instructions. It's a good thing I already know how to do this stuff on Mac. All right, so I'm gonna need to clone this repo. So let's go stick that somewhere. So I've created a Phalcon test folder, which will be useful in this. So let's go ahead. Guess I don't have to clone it, I could just download it, but whatever, this is easy. Okay. All right, let's make a new directory. Let's make a source, Phalcon source. Git clone, and let's see how this goes. It shouldn't be too big. I'd hope not. This is definitely something where Paul gets judgy Judgerson on projects. You know, all it takes is one developer to accidentally stick a SQL file somewhere within the project, you know, definitely in a web project, and all of a sudden now it's a 500 meg project, and even though you've deleted it, no one's redone the branch history. That's pretty good. 130 meg is, it's not the end of the world. I got fast internet, it'll be fine. All right, so next we are going to run build. All right, looks like we got a build. And let's see how we go. Not so bad so far. The part I'm really interested in is where we'll move this. I'm hoping it'll move it into a location that makes sense. It should. And then I always consider the tricky part of PHP, and that's probably not true. Let's see here. Got an error. Nope, only got a warning. Got plenty of warnings. Look, zval, so it's all Zend stuff. I don't really think I have any interesting Zend extensions installed, so that could impact this a bit. You know, to pop back here a moment, it looks like if you're on the Windows side of things, there's a precompiled DLL. And I'm going to admit, there's always that benefit of PHP and Windows kind of experience. Seems like it's always been pretty good. And I think that having an abstract runtime for the kernel, where you don't have to be architecture specific on compilation, definitely could have its benefits of getting a team up and running with this. So I have a Windows machine, and I will probably try this process again on it, because here's my thoughts. So on this machine, I find it pretty easy to update PHP configuration. On a Windows machine, though, I've always found the environment configuration to be a little bit more clunky. And I'm hoping that that's not going to continue to be a problem, maybe with this. So let's see, how are we doing here? Zend, are you compiling? Let's get a look at how much CPU. C-Lang is just gliding along. All right, well, we're building. We have to find something to converse about, I guess. Well, let's look ahead a little bit and just see what we're getting ourselves into. All right, so we're at compilation. Oop. And aside from us updating our PHP INI file, build completed. Don't forget to run make test. It looks like it's moved installing shared extension into lib extensions no debug and installing header files. Thanks for compiling. Build succeeded. Please restart your web server to complete the install. That's the thing I didn't really set up, so I'm probably gonna have to monkey with MAMP a little bit, because I don't believe I have Apache installed by default on here. Yeah, so that might be where this stops, and then I'll come back and do like a formal review. We'll see what happens. It may not be the end of the world. And I've only been using MAMP, just been a little too lazy to set things up. So let's just grab a look at the preferences here for PHP. So it is using PHP 7.0.1.5. That's fine. We're going to inspect the location to where the stuff was installed. I'm trying to see if maybe MAMP gives me a really easy way to get at the PHP INI file for this version that's packed with it. Doesn't seem so. But hey, whatever. We'll give it a spin up, and we'll go look at the setup page, and I'll try to refresh my memory as to MAMP nonsense. Okay. So let's go ahead and inspect these folders that it's given us and try to get an idea if this is where our SO was located, or because it doesn't say I actually need to run make. I guess install probably runs make install for me. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. We've got, here's our first location. Oops, not cat. What am I doing? So there's a Phalcon object there, and then there's also this header file. So installing shared extension, okay. Non-debug, non-ZTS, and from 2015. It's a very interesting place to put it. Well, if it's installed a shared extension, I may be able to follow this very simple instruction that it has here of just doing extension phalcon.so. So first, let's see here. My SQL is not running, and that's probably because I'm running something else. I run a couple of concurrent versions of MySQL at a time. And while I don't really need MySQL right now, I think that it needs that running for the start page to work. All right, let's see if this will tell me where my PHP INI file is. Yeah, PHP info to the rescue. All right, well, we're going to be running over to a little folder called MAMP. So let's go ahead and split this window horizontally. let's go pop in the map directory. So we're in a conf directory now. We'll get vim going with the PHP ini. All right. Let's see, do we have any extensions? Well, the extension directory is actually right there where our shared extension has already been included. So I'm going to assume that it's already there. Let's take a look in here and see if Phalcon send extensions, PHP build extensions. Well, we're just going to add, oh, so I understand what they're doing here. So when they reference the file directly, it's just because the extension directory is, so let's see here. So dynamic extensions. I just want to see where some other extensions have been installed. This seems like the place to install an extension. All right, so extension equals phalcon.so. So that should be all I need there. And we'll just have to restart our servers. I don't really know if Apache needs that, but hey, what the heck? It's in the README, so we'll try it. Okay. I know I've lost that now, and I've got some errors. So Phalcon. Yep, Phalcon SO. Very cool. All right. Let's get out of there. Let's go ahead and restart these servers and get rid of this frame because I don't need it anymore. That's the full configuration. So given everything else should be done, and it shouldn't be much more than us creating a sample project. So let's switch this over to see if I can navigate to this without having to actually bring up a real browser. Since I'm not quite 100% super used to dealing with OBS. Well, at least not yet. Well, that's just not going to work. So let's get rid of that. Give me a second while I set up an actual browser window with our Phalcon framework in it, so I can walk through a bit of the tutorial. Just drop this over here. Alright, so here's a proper real browser for us to mess around with. Let's go ahead and look at the documentation. And let's see, we got the installation. Let's go to a tutorial. So let's look at the file structure. Okay, Phalcon does not impose a particular file structure for applications. Well, that's cool. Best way to use this guide is follow each step. You can get the complete code here. So really, I just kind of want to run this code and maybe then just go a little manipulation, because I'm not going to think it's that interesting to spend the time actually monkeying about with. But I would like to see how things are wired up and how that stuff works. So we'll clone this repo into our project folder. Okay, so all right, here we go, get clone, and we're gonna clone the tutorial, cool. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell MAMP, so originally, so there's our tutorial code. We're just gonna clean this up a little bit. pop down to Phalcon test, tutorial, and then we'll just remove this one. Okay, so we've got all the things we think we need. Kind of makes sense. I'm really excited about this idea of not actually having to maybe even run Composer to get this running. So I'm going to repoint MAMP's start page to this project. And let's go ahead and jump. That's not what I wanted. Okay. So that's our document root. Where is our index.php? That actually looks like it's in the public directory, so I'm going to have to point this into the public directory. And give everything a boot up. Alright, so that should live over here on localhost. Just to keep it from getting irritated. Oh, this page isn't working. Well, that's not good. I'm pretty sure I have this on 80. We'll double check the ports real quick. Yep, Apache port is on port 80, so I guess the next thing to do servers have started, and I can definitely access my configuration page. So now the real issue. If I can go to localhost, but my fancy app won't work. Well, I guess it's worthwhile to take a look at the htaccess file and make sure there's nothing funny in there. There was rewrite rules, so I probably did not need to redirect the server to the public directory. That was happening automatically. Well, that's the first confusing thing. That's probably only confusing to me, because my PHP foo is probably a little weak. I'll wait for Apache to give us a reboot. A little thumbs up on that, yeah, that looks good. No bueno. Well, the page isn't working means that we're getting a 500 error from the server, and let's go point this at something more simplistic. Let's just add us a dumb index.html file here. If our server is running, and we'll just kind of like nick the htaccess file for the moment. So if Apache's running, and we're pointing to this directory, as long as permissions have been set up correctly, which they should be, then we should pick up our HTML, which will say something like, wow, that was hard. Okay. All right, cool. So I can definitely say, without a shadow of a doubt, that Apache is pointing to the right direction and probably has reasonably correct permissions. So let's see what else might be going on here. Well, we'll try to directly address public index.php. And we're going to go back to the 500 error. So let's see where MAMP likes to hide its files, its log files. And that'll be pretty cool. All right. Boo, boo, boo. All right. So my PHP ini tells me that map is located. Oh, I know, ma'am. You definitely want to call out to something somewhere. So we're looking somewhere around here. Yeah, we're just going to go directly to the map route, I think. I'm probably going to have to do some additional configuration. So let's see what we got in here. So it's in our bin directory. Oh, we had a log directory back there. And we'll tail the PHP error log, which hopefully will actually be something useful. Tail and follow. Okay. Let's see what we got. Let's make this so you guys can see this too. All right. Right. So we had class Phalcon loader not found in Phalcon test tutorial public index.php. Okay. So even though I've added Phalcon as an extension, it doesn't appear that that has been loaded correctly. Let's go ahead and look at the map configuration that I've been staring at off screen from you guys. Okay, so document root is that. I don't see any extensions being exposed to the PHP ini. We do have the extensions directory, which is definitely the one where it decided to install that stuff. MB string extension makes use of blah blah blah, API extensions, SQLite extensions. That seems like it. So I don't have anything more detailed to talk about with that extension being available or not, but it's definitely not loading it. So let's go ahead and pop the htaccess back in, check out this one, rewrite condition, request file name, and then passes it as the URL. Okay. So we might have some more interesting stuff. Anyways, let us go ahead and poke this bear a little more. So right now I'm pointed at the tutorial folder, and that's what it expects. htaccess should redirect us to the public index.php according to this. And you probably can't see that as well as I'd like. Alright. Well, let's give it a go, see if we get the same error. Really, at this point in debugging, I'm just looking for a different error. That's the fun part, right? Nope, same problem. So we're not getting the Phalcon loader. So let's go ahead and poke our heads back at the tutorial and see if maybe I've missed a step. Apache web server with mod rewrite. I should definitely check to make sure mod rewrite is enabled. I'm almost positive it is. Loaded modules, mod rewrite, absolutely. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go back and double check my ini file. set bin, and probably what? PHP, and PHP again, maybe? Yep. And then 7015. And, oh, I bet you, though, it did not install my extension local to this install. And that is what the problem is. Let's find out. So extension. So really my extensions directory, and I might need to look up to see if I can. Yep, different extensions directory. Just a regular dumb problem. Not paying attention enough. So PHP ini multiple extension directory. Yeah. Usually you can just comma separate these or PHP does not support multiple extension directory. Well, that's fine. I'll just copy the stuff across. There's just not that much going on here. And I don't think I need the headers. Yeah, I shouldn't need the headers. So we'll cp phalcon.so to our alternative directory. How'd I know that you're going to give me a hard time, ma'am? Alright, there's a Phalcon.so in here now. Alright, we'll restart the server and see if that takes care of the problem. So there's a pSQL extension installed here. I wonder if I should be able to. Meh. That was worth looking. Okay. We're up and running again. So let's go ahead and poke the bear a little bit more. Great success, I say. Let's go ahead and pop back to the log directory, since that's going to be my new best friend. Tail follow PHP error log. All right, let's go ahead and truncate that and see if we're getting any other weird PHP output. Nope, that's it. Tutorial controller handler class cannot be loaded. All right, well, let's play around with our newly installed magic now that it's working. Let's see what kind of cool stuff we can make it do. Almost. I'll figure this out someday. There we go. We'll come back to you in a minute. All right. So let's see how our application routes. Let's just try to figure this out ourselves for a minute. So we got some SQL that I'm not using. And we have our index controller, which handles an index action. We have our signup controller, which has our signup action. All right, so where would our configuration for this fancy boy be? Because somewhere I figure, and since I'm a Rails guy by nature, my thought is I have to have probably gonna be in here. we have to have some kind of routes file, something to help us get to our controllers. Set up a base URL so that all generated URLs are included in the tutorial folder. So we say, that's fine, set base URL as /tutorial, and that's probably the problem. I'm starting to think that might be the base path, but we can always die dump this and see what we get. All right, so we have a host. Not worried about this database part yet. We register directories for controllers and models for auto loading, I assume. And what else? I mean, I'm going to try to hit /tutorial. Oh, okay, so the base URL is allowing for the rewrite. Tutorial controller handler class cannot be loaded. And that would be because these are not called tutorial controller. So I'm going to take a stab at it that this should just probably be root because of where we're working with the project and see if that has any outcome. All right, so here we go. Perfect. Okay, so that's actually a pretty cool feature, being able to set the base URL. It means it would be pretty dumb easy for me to have multiple of these running within the same like shared vhost and really have not a lot of issue with routing between them. That's pretty cool. I think loading order might be an interesting. Maybe not. Okay. So let's check out our index controller. It returns nothing, which is cool. And I noticed in our views we have the kind of like naturally named index versus this, which only returns us a PHTML file. So let's figure out what PHTML is now. Come back to my browser. PHTML. I'm assuming it's Phalcon HTML. Because it's is code with inline PHP processing instructions. Well, we're probably going to immediately. Wow, this is great. Thanks, TechTarget, for the least useful page I've ever seen. Okay, let's just throw some ads in there. That'll make it better. Ah, nice link to the tutorial. Because I'm too lazy to read, let's figure out where they talk about PHTML. Well, I can tell you by staring at it that PHTML looks like they're really trying to very aggressively follow like this Rails helper concept. Echo statements, so you actually always write it as processed as strings, which is a very interesting way of taking this. One of the things I'm definitely going to be trying pretty soon is getting some. So I've used Blade, which is very similar to Razor. So Blade is the Laravel equivalent of a template engine, which is effectively a. I don't want to call it a theft. It's a honorary clone of Razor, which is the .NET-y kind of thing. And I really, really like that a lot. But it's very kludgy to get working within their framework, so I don't like trying to reuse it. It's like getting access to the engine itself to make it functional is somewhat challenging. That leaves me with an expectation that there's got to be something better out there, and it's probably going to be pretty easy for me to pull this together. Let's just see if this gives me anything. Hierarchical rendering, just as I would expect. So while they don't give you some kind of expectation of how the files are supposed to be organized, because they have given you the ability to configure them here, here's my honest review of that. Don't ever do that. Like, this stuff should be, honest to goodness, always defined so that there is no confusion as to where your folders are. Like, if you ever want one project to work like another project, it's imperative that controllers are in controllers, models are in models, views are in views. You should never be changing those configurations. So while this gives you the definite opportunity to do so, just keep that inside just a little bit, and don't do it because it's dumb. Like, idioms in programming exist. I'm gonna go a little tirade. So idioms in programming exist for an honest reason. A whole bunch of people have decided that they've come up with a clever way of handling the problem. And then they've found some way to standardize that. Now, it's not official. It's not canon. It's not a library. It's opinion. But these idioms mean that someone else is going to be able to follow them. And that's the whole point. It gives a regular pattern without it having to be something high level. You know, we don't have to deal with a programming pattern to have an idiom. An idiom could be a way that you particularly code style a particular section of code in a particular manner, which will help another developer who's familiar with that idiom share in that experience and kind of not have to spend as much time reading it. So some of it's about visual representation, and some of it is about just being able to move between frameworks and other projects. You know, what's cool about this and what inspired me to take a stab at it was I am able to look at this, and this looks very much like my Rails projects. And in fact, I think that maybe it was inspired. Rails has inspired a lot of pretty good projects to do some pretty awesome stuff. And one of the things that always keeps me going back to PHP is it's definitely got that cheap on the server feel. I don't have to do a lot of work to maintain it. It seems like it's kind of like throw it up there and it works. And as long as you're following good security practices, you're going to be very happy with your outcome, especially if you're dealing with just an application which is mostly loading strings. PHP's finest game is strings. So when I don't have to spin up a DigitalOcean server to run my PHP app, hopefully I could find a host that already has a compiled version of Phalcon available or lets me load my own extensions, which would be pretty cool, although I strongly doubt it. But I do suspect that my monthly cost for the volume of sites that I might want to run with Phalcon on the same server are going to be pretty high. Ruby's awesome, and I really love working with Rails. But one of the things where I think it fails is as a application in order to or as a framework and a language when you're building really clever stuff that is also like prototypical, like a prototype that you're just testing things out and you're trying to see if you can build a business around it, which I know a lot of Rails or a lot of people have picked up Rails for that reason. That is without Heroku supporting this community, really, it can get kind of expensive. Like the DigitalOcean server that I often require to run, Rails and Fusion Passenger is usually $20 a month minimum. And I'm sure that someone out there could probably give me some advice as towards a better solution. But personally, that's as good as I've been able to get it. So I will probably just copy this page probably for the rest of my life. Rails lets you do something similar. It doesn't let you redefine your controllers directory, although you technically could. It lets you add additional load libraries. So if I wanted to add the most useless directory ever, lib, to put some libraries into, I could add some additional code without necessarily munging up what's a model, what's a view, and what's a controller by sticking it in another folder. That I actually kind of like, that being up front. And I'm assuming they're using PSR2 auto-loading, so let's check that out. This is app controller's index controller, and it's index controller, both camel cased. I like that, both the same case. Yeah, looks right. I'm more excited about this index controller who has an index action who automatically, with no body, just drops over here. Here's my actual thought. Is a controller by default have RESTful properties? So if I knock this out of here and I still try to go to the index, will it still render me the index file? There'd probably be a reason someday that I might make a generic controller for scaffolding. But this is more of just an interest point, because it's definitely something that I am able to do very readily. Nope. Okay, that's fine. It's not really anything to end the world about. Okay, Synapse controller. Let's take a look at this guy. So, of course, it doesn't matter if the file exists or not. We always have to provide the action. We have a register action. Now, I'm wondering how we got to this point. I'm going to assume that in the sign up index there is a link to. And really the link to is how routing works. So I'm getting the subtle impression that routing is not a centrally managed theme. Set up base URL, so all URLs go into the tutorial folder, which isn't really a thing anymore, so just delete that. Actually, we'll just edit it. So set up a base URL so that all generated URLs include the root directory. I like that better. I guess so I could probably set up some base directories and point things around, and I could almost see like a little bit of Django where I could set up sub apps that talk to each other and kind of configure them together. So it's kind of a cool idea. There's also set up tag helpers. Well, we're gonna go take a look at that at some point. Create a DI. So we have dependency injection through a factory pattern. And so DI, we load our classes, we create dependency injection, then we assign a DB object to it, and that returns a new DB adapter. We create a view object, which functionally returns a new view, and that, so we have a view handler, and then we have a URL handler. That's actually not a bad idea. This is, you know, if it was written in XML, I'd call it, well, maybe I won't say the dirty word struts, but I did anyways. That means that I probably could assign I could build my own helpers far more easily. So I think I'm going to dig into that at some point later. That's pretty cool. I like that. I know that in the Laravel world, the whole dependency injection concept was a big deal to them, but not orthogonal in its implementation from me, the end user. Maybe to them as the developers, when they put that together, it made a lot of sense the way they were injecting things. To me, it felt like Java. And as, you know, opinion warning, I will probably always say this, Java is probably the worst language ever used for rendering web pages. I think Java has all this potential power to be a, you know, high-level runtime environment, do really awesome concurrent stuff, handle a lot of very heavy, like it's a super awesome runtime for doing anything. Why would you use it to deliver HTML or JavaScript? Like, why? And then it gave me this feeling. So Laravel is supposed to be this Ruby-esque modern PHP framework. Meanwhile, inside it feels like .NET and Java, like old kludge, and then I find this, which, look how small this is. There's nothing in here. There's no composer file. Of course, I'm going to add composer because I don't know if Carbon is built into Phalcon, and I'm sure it's not, but I'd love Carbon to be compiled to a PHP extension at this point because I think I need that almost uniformly in every project. So they will inherit a composer file at some point, but I'm not required to just to get the base libraries. As a side note, one of the things that would be pretty cool is that this means that I could probably add custom dependencies to my own Phalcon installation. So, say I did want to compile Carbon into it, gives me this subtle suspicion that maybe I could add it as a dependency to Phalcon and then load it through Phalcon. So that, I may be talking to my butt on that one, but definitely worth a thought. Definitely something I'm gonna take a stab at. All right, so I've gilded a little enough. Let's take a look at the sign-up page and see what we've done. So we have a form builder of sorts, which tells us that the form points to sign up register. So really, I think I could probably make whatever I want, and it'll automatically route to it, which is really kind of a cool idea. I've always liked the idea in Rails that I have this centralized routing infrastructure for figuring out where things go, but you know, deep down, some part of me just kind of wishes I could skip the routes file. It does make it nice for me to like exclude certain actions and do some route configuration, but all the boilerplate stuff, like, oh, I made a controller and I'd like it to go to this action, then I have to create a custom. And newbie Rails people tend to suffer a lot from the routes file. No routes file will be my function, and I'm going to see if I can just return a string from here. Let's see if that'll do the job. So I should just be able to pop over now to my browser and hit up a lovely localhost /signup slash. Oh, well, I don't need a template per se. So I've done a camel case. Let's see what they're, let's double check this. So when I did register action, oh, I need to go route file action. Is it going to be camel case? Is it going to be underscore? Who knows? Nope. Maintains. So I wonder if I break tradition. It makes me wonder if there's a way to add aliases. In case I want to create like hyphenated, interesting paths. This does also mean that I probably would be able to register non-standard, like dynamic paths almost. Should be pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked about this. So if I don't provide a return, it's naturally going to look for the view. So let's test that out. So I should be able to, let's go ahead and unruby this back to our old version. And I should make a PHTML file for it under signup. And let's steal a little bit of code from this page so I don't have to learn how to write it just yet. And we'll echo. Whoa. It's empty white space in these files, it seems. Okay. We'll go ahead and pop this thing back. Oh, we already did. Cool. So I have a return statement. I also have a route. One should have an exclamation point. Let's see which one we get. Action no routes file was not found on handler signup. So interesting. Let's give it another run. Okay, so the return statement did define the final action. Let's go ahead and okay, that's cool. So I could always make sure that a route doesn't actually return anything by just returning nothing. I could return JSON then, I assume. Let's try that. Well, JSON encode. Now I get to see if I remember enough of my on the spot PHP knowledge. And because I'm going to be overly picky about style, go ahead. You can yell at me about my code style later. But I picked dense. So I'm going to return JSON encode. So the hope is we should get a string back that looks like JSON. And I got an error. Error is my favorite issue with going from JavaScript to PHP is the endless. Hey! Now, I'm assuming that this did not send a content type JSON, but it would be lovely to know if it actually did. So let's go look at the network tab and let's go ahead and get rid of our filter, hit all, and go look at the headers of this request. So we did send a content type of text HTML. Okay, so my JSON parser is just being overly anxious about trying to help me out. So it would be interesting to then research how I would actually set the JSON type. So let's go ahead and do Phalcon set content type. I have a subtle suspicion that this is not going to be overly complicated. I'm going to assume that I probably have access to a response object. So I'm assuming inside my controller, I'm probably going to do this thing. Let's see. How old is this? June 2014. Ugh, who knows what's changed by then? Well, let's just look at the documentation. Because that's what real developers do, is we read the documentation all day. Okay, so response is new Phalcon response. Response that's status code. So I'm assuming that I get the response object probably injected inside the controller. So let's Phalcon controller, because the controller should really just be a abstraction for preparing the response. Best way for JSON. I like the way that sounds, but again, it's 2013. This dot response. So here's my normal controller. Create a response instance. All right. Let's give that a stab. So I guess I get a default one and I don't have access to it. Although I'm probably gonna do some more exploration. Yeah, we'll just direct address this so I don't have to do an include. All right, so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and throw this guy up in here. Cool, and then we'll just pass in the variable JSON. Let's see if this does anything. Let's see if we'll get a fancy error as a result. Ooh, I probably need to return the response. Which I find interesting. It's smart enough to figure out the difference between a string. All right, so no routes file. Content type text HTML. So no, that didn't send. I'm pretty sure I have to say set content type. I misread this. And what should that be? Application JSON and probably what, UTF-8. Meh. Cool. All right. That was actually pretty easy. You know, I could see this maybe not being as super user-friendly dealing with creating a JSON API, although there probably is some way for me to kind of set at the controller level and not the action level the content type. I know the content type isn't totally necessary, but when you're producing a properly formatted API, it's really nice to be able to say to a client, oh, you sent me HTML, or you asked for content HTML, I'm going to return you HTML. You asked me for JSON, return you JSON. Or just always enforcing that you return JSON. Or, and as a step forward, XML versus text, just to give you some kind of control. So, long story short, I'm quite pleased. We're going to do one more test where I'm going to make a new controller. We're going to call it new controller, in case you were wondering. And because I'm lazy, we're just going to steal this one and do the renames, which extends controller. Now, the first thing I'd probably do is I'd probably create a base controller and then start figuring out if there's before actions and things like that. And then we'll call it the new action. One of the things I'll be really trying to figure out is how do I limit gets or posts. That's going to be kind of a cool idea. So this is the real test of how easy this will be. I'm going to create a model called the new, we'll call it news. I want to see if this will be possible to treat this like an ethereal model without access to a database. So we're just going to add name. We're not going to save it, and we're just going to create these like Pojo objects without a database connection and see if it barks at me. So it's called news, but not for a good reason. All right, and then we'll create a new folder, well, lowercase, for views, and then we'll add And our controller action is new. So we'll then add a, gotta add a folder if you want to add a folder. No, just don't want to. There you are. And then we'll add our new .phtml. Which we will echo, because that seems to be the process of the day.
I don't know that.
Oh, hi, Echo. Probably don't need that. Probably do, but yeah, that looks normal. So we'll drop out a pre-tag. Okay, so we're gonna create. Yes, we want to be able to pass part of this variable down to the response. So that's my goal. This is going to have a name field, and I want to be able to access this in the response. So that's actually, deep down, the thing I need to look at next. So let's go to the Phalcon tutorial, back to here, to the actual documentation. So creating a controller, sending output to a view. Okay, we've done that. Next step is creating a model, setting up database connection, storing data in the model. All right, let's see if we hit this. Okay, so di set function db adapter, gotcha. Doing stuff, we're back in the controller. Okay, so this .view disable, that's not really what I want. Okay. Handling the request. So here was our example. Application, new application. Ooh, jump around a little bit, don't we? Autoloaders. Just gets bigger, doesn't it? I like their lowly setting of things. So I'm assuming there's probably like a view bucket, or view bag, or something like that. Using views, this is definitely a view issue. Function, show action, this view, post ID, pass the post ID. Okay, that's actually pretty interesting. I kind of like that. I've always kind of thought the view bag concept was really the correct way of building this stuff. So let's go ahead and extend our controller to this view, and we're going to call this new model equals new news. I'm actually going to create this on a separate line. Too many tabs. I don't care what you say. 2 spaces. That's it. And this should live over here, but we're not going to argue with that right now. Again, something PHP people have agreed on, and so I'll do it. Okay, so we'll create a new. Did we update this? Yes, we did. And then we'll say new model, and we'll see how property access works. I'm going to assume I should be able to do name equals Paul. Let's capitalize myself because I like myself. And we'll do new model. We'll pass that down to the view. All right, so down here I should be able to then echo. Yeah. Let's go take another check at that. Yep, new model. This, new model, all right. New model name, cool. Let's give that the old stabberoonie. So this is gonna be under a whole new thing, new, and then new. Controller handler could not be loaded. So this is the new action. And we didn't get any errors. Let's double check. Right, it just doesn't seem to respect our new controller. New controller is spelled correctly. We have file setup. I guess we're gonna have to go look in the index and make sure I'm not missing something about adding a particular. Should have been indexed. Shouldn't need to rebuild anything. It is a public function. So what is different about this controller? If I hit a reserved keyword in some manner. Let's change our action to index and see if that has any effect. It's always fun when you don't get any errors. Whoops. That's an interesting side effect. That's very interesting. I can put anything in front of it and it still pattern matches because of the way that the kind of like auto routing works. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's see. New controller handler class cannot be loaded. Did we miss something in name? So we have index controller, we have new controller, we have index action, we have sign up with our little extra route we created. Action looks like it's spelled correctly. I don't see any other place where, and it's might as well just like search this application for sign up. Everything just extends controller, and while there are some things that link to it, doesn't seem to be anything specifically useful. I do like the idea that, you know, index only serves the root. Everything else has to be underneath something. So I guess it's worthwhile me making sure that there's not like a spelling nuance that I've missed. Okay, so slash signup has an index. So slash new should have an index. New controller handler class. If I do sign up something funny, action BB could not be found on handler signup. So I'm gonna just say that I probably have hit some kind of like naming thing. We'll call this test controller. And we'll see if that has an effect. Test controller handler class. The only thing left I can try to do is I shouldn't have to restart the server. When we give it a reboot, unless there's some object caching that's happened, all my other changes have seemed to have taken effect. I don't think there's like a boot up step. There shouldn't be. Or like a pre-cache step. Not that I notice. Which is quite a conundrum, isn't it? I guess this is kind of what you get for not reading the manual before you start throwing yourself into something, but no, I disagree. This should just work. Control. Oh, well, had someone been watching, but they saw nothing. They saw nothing at all. We're just going to go ahead and rename this back to new. Where was everybody out there in internet land trying to help me at that point? Internet, you dropped the ball. Very disappointed in your behavior. Alright, so we got a blank page. We did access new. Our action is index. I would have assumed I would have got something interesting on this page, but I didn't. We did hit the index action. We did not see an hello or anything. So I did put that new in a pre-tag. Let's go ahead and make it an H1. And then we'll make sure that maybe we didn't miss returning something as part of this instructions Paul doesn't read. So yeah, I'm gonna make the assumption that I need to return the view. So let's go look at index or new or sign up and see if any of these. So this is view disable. Here I return to response. So read a little bit more about using views. Pass the post ID parameter to the view. Of course, makes total sense. I'm wondering if it's swallowing errors, or it's because I'm maybe not accessing it by this. Okay, so they set it to their show action, and then our show PHP just directly accesses the post ID, and this is the post controller layout. Get content. Okay. That's an interesting way of dealing with templating. I like it. Touch that some point later. All right. I don't see anything wrong yet. That means absolutely nothing, of course. So let's knock out this line and see if we get at least the first line. All right, so it's not respecting possibly all of this. So let's start seeing if it's swallowing errors unnecessarily, which would be disappointing. All right, so it doesn't like that either. And that's because this file is no longer named new. So it doesn't have a template to render. This is now the index. Oh, renaming things midstream is irritating. All right, so now we're back to that. Let's go back to getting our data and see if that is as cut and dry as it should be. It totally is. So I'm pretty stoked about this. So it does use this like kind of view bag concept, but lets me physically define things. So it probably means that I can also set, this dot view and then equal to compact, something from compact or some other object, which I'm pretty stoked about. All right, that's it. That's the only thing I needed to try, and I'm gonna say that I was able to go from, it's been an hour or so, I was able to go from absolutely nothing to effectively a working application with some dynamic parts, even though it's not very interesting. That's a big thumbs up for me. Performance seems pretty good. Now obviously I'm running it side by side with OBS, and my computer doesn't have a video card, so that has a somewhat of an impact here. I'm going to do a couple more of these probably as I get into a bigger application, but I could definitely see this being a Rails competitor at the moment. The thing that I'm going to look for that might be missing is the extra magic that comes with Rails. So the next thing I'm going to be looking at is implementing an authentication framework. And then I'm going to try to do something I do on a lot of sites, which is include GitHub authentication with OAuth. So in the Rails world, we have OmniAuth. In this world, who knows? There could be something really great out there, and I'm not going to say there isn't yet. But we'll do a brand new project from scratch. We'll do Composer. We'll pull in some nice dependencies. We'll do a to-do app. Maybe we'll do a calendar. Ooh, I like doing a calendar, because it's far more complicated than one might think, and really enjoy that one. So I'm probably going to cut this. I'm going to do another video that's just kind of a synopsis of how things went here. So stay tuned for that. I'm just going to do a kind of a deeper dive review as more of a. This was more like, can I get it to work, and how many things am I going to run into? And I got to admit, the number of problems were really pretty low. I'm pleased, and I think the Phalcon guys are doing. Whoever's contributing to that project, the men and women who are putting that effort forth at this point have really impressed me. Laravel got me back into PHP, but I gotta admit, it dropped the ball halfway through. This could be the kind of since I haven't heard anyone talking about it, this could honestly be the diamond in the rough. Because I keep talking about this, the third renaissance of PHP, and I think one of these frameworks is going to pick up and kind of do for it what Rails did for Ruby. And and get everyone who's an entrepreneur back into PHP and away from WordPress for building applications. So thoughts on that? Obviously, give me your criticisms. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening.